Hi kids, I'm going to talk to you about some pretty cool things that I think you need to know about the possibilities the future may hold. But first of all, I've got some questions, just to check that we all agree on a few things first. So, what do we think the best way is of farming our food? Tractors, right? Okay, how about water? Yeah, okay, so quarries from the rain. What about cleaning your clothes and keeping them clean? Well, washing machines and tumble dryers, as well as probably not rolling around in the mud so often. How about transport around town? Cars driven by mum and dad? What about long distance travel? Planes, no doubt. What about houses? What's the best way of building a house? Square with bricks, tiles and windows, right? What about the energy we need for all of this? Well, oil and gas, maybe a bit of renewable. So these are the best ways of doing things, right? Wrong. Actually, they're nowhere near what we can do. Let's start with food. There's a few better ways of producing fresh organic food for everyone on this planet, but one example of them is hydroponics. Hydroponics is where we grow plants in organically nutrient-rich water, which means that we don't need soil. The plants can be grown up to 5 times faster by rotating them in a cylinder like this, because they have to fight against gravity, which means they work extra hard and that makes them grow faster. But also, by having a light in the middle of all the plants, we save on the amount of lights that we need to use for the plants. So rather than having the lights over the top of them, we have them in the middle and it bathes all of them in the light at the same time. Now this method uses just 1% amount of all of the water we use in all of our farming right across this planet. 1 acre floor space in a 10-story building like this could produce as much food as 400 acres of normal farming land. Now, if we put this all across the world, we would actually need 99.9% less space to grow the same amount of food, without needing to use any of those nasty chemicals like pesticides and herbicides on our farming fields like we currently do. What about water? Well, there's a few ways we can produce fresh drinking water, something that's going to be a problem in the future. We could use desalination to produce drinking water from the sea, as well as designing our houses to use shower and sink water to flush the toilets and even reuse the water we've peed in for drinking. That may sound gross, kids, but if you want to be an astronaut, then you better get used to the idea because that's what they have to do when they're in space. In hot countries, we can actually take moisture from the air around us and turn it into drinking water. We also have bottles that can filter any dirty water to produce fresh drinking water from just a few pumps. The 780 million people in the world who do not have access to clean drinking water would do if they had one of these machines or bottles. And remember, with hydroponics, we're now saving at least 99% of the water we used to use to grow our food as well. Roughly 70% of all clean drinking water on this planet is used for farming. So, what about clothing? Well, using something called nanotechnology, which is basically using tiny robots to change matter or stuff, we now have clothes that you could, for example, pour Hershey's chocolate sauce on and it will simply run off without leaving a trace. This is called a hydrophobic surface and can be used on nearly anything you want to keep clean. Housing. We can now 3D print homes in a factory like your car is and then move them to where they need to be and put them up with very little need for any of the dangerous human work involved. Dome-shaped buildings like these are safer and take much less resources to build. Bear in mind that nearly 50% of all of our waste comes from building. We can build our homes with something called the thermocouple effect in the outer wall to repel or pull in heat, meaning that we do not need anywhere near as much energy for heating or cooling our homes. We also have the ability to build cities on top of and under the sea. For short distance journeys we could still use cars, but we do not need to worry about crashing them anymore, as we now have cars that can drive themselves safely. They've done over 300,000 miles in the United States across towns, cities and the countryside, and they haven't crashed once. 1.2 million people die on the roads on this planet every year, and it simply doesn't have to happen anymore. As for long distance travel, we now have magnetically levitated trains. Now, they are trains that are suspended on a pole by magnetism. That means they're not touching, so there's no friction. If we put these in an airtight tube so that there's no air stopping them from going really, really fast, you can travel at speeds of up to 4,000 miles per hour safely. They use just 2% the energy of planes as well and can travel on land or underwater. You could go from London to Japan in just over 2 hours, have your lunch and be home in time for tea. Energy is the backbone of our survival. We currently mostly use oil and gas which pollute our atmosphere, and once again we simply don't need to use them anymore, as we have more than enough clean renewable sources of technology to produce our energy. Solar energy is one of them. The energy from the sun's rays hitting the surface of the earth is roughly 10,000 times our energy use. With the use of the nanotechnology we mentioned earlier and space-based solar panels, we could power the world 1,000 times over with solar power alone, if we position our panels correctly, of course. By harnessing just 20% the potential of wind energy, we could power all of the world's energy needs. Tidal power could supply 34% of the UK's energy supply, for example. Wave power could provide half of the world's energy needs. But all of the water-based energy supplies could supply 96% of the world's energy. And geothermal technology, which mines heat from deep under the ground, could supply us with all the energy we would ever need. So why are we not using all this great technology, kids? Us adults talk a good talk about sustainability, the environment, sharing, and the importance of addressing issues such as poverty. Yet we have all of the tools right at our fingertips to solve these issues, and we are not using them. So, over to you. Why aren't we doing it? We adults clearly don't know, otherwise we'd be doing it, right? You're the future. You can have any future you want. You're newer to this world. You have fresh eyes to see these things in a new and different way. So what do you think? What are we missing, kids?